Holy crap, Marvel fans, the ending of Loki Season 2 has leaked.
Oh my God.
Not everything. I mean, we still don't know exactly how all of this is going to go down in episodes 5 and in episode 6. We actually got a ton of information about what to expect in these last two episodes, and it sets up something absolutely incredible for the Loki character, the TVA, and the multiverse at large. A lot of this has to do with this image right here leaking out a couple of days ago, which explains a huge part of what is happening at the end of the Loki show. Man, this is dope. I can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait to see it. Let's break it down. Now, before we get into that crazy image that I just showed you and talking about the very end of the show, let's talk about what to expect from episode 5. Due to a lot of the trailers and some stuff that was put out by the Geeky Cast and even My Time to Shine Hello, we know that next week's episode is going to have us visiting the actual lives of the TVA agents. This is happening presumably before they were recruited into the TVA by either Ravonna or by Victor Timley himself. It seems like they all might have been recruited from the Sacred Timeline and made to fight in the multiversal war and then establish the TVA. Again, we know that we're doing some of this stuff just based on what was in some of the trailers. And My Time to Shine Hello calling the episode filler is really interesting. To me, I almost get a vibe that we're going to go right into these characters' backstories and them being recruited into the TVA for the first time, maybe with no real explanation as far as if this is happening now in time or if this is happening back then. And I know we can get into timey-wimey confusing things when it comes to Loki and time travel, but I think we might actually see in episode 5 the very first time through of these variants being recruited by, again, Victor Timely, Ravonna, or somebody to come join the TVA. Now, according to Alex Perez, we're going to see Victor Timely again and possibly other Kang variants in these final two episodes. So it's probably the case that you'll get some Kang variants, maybe even Victor Timely in episode 5 or in episode 6. I think it's important to remember that the Victor Timely we saw destroyed or spaghettified in episode 4 was not the actual Victor Timely from the Sacred Timeline. This is a Victor Timely that was created in a branch timeline after Ravonna takes the TVA handbook to him at a young age. And so we know that you're going to be getting Victor Timely again and other Kang variants in these episodes. Perhaps we'll see Kang actually recruiting all of the people from the TVA agents, like the main group of folks. But based on a lot of what I'm hearing, it kind of seems like episode 5 might be a slower episode where we see a lot of these backstories, we get a lot of character development, a lot of filling in of the storyline for Loki overall. And then just like in Loki Season 1, I expect the finale of Loki Season 2 to be mind-blowing, to have some crazy conversations with this variant of Loki, who I think will be actually at the end of time. And oh, baby, am I excited to talk to you about this shit. It is absolutely dope. Now, in order to frame this conversation about this image here and what I think is going on with Loki Season 2, I first want to talk about an old plot leak. And in this old plot leak, it was said that during the events of Loki Season 2, we would eventually find out that there was still somebody at the end of time who was manipulating everything even after He Who Remains was killed, and this was going to end up being an older variant of Sylvie. And we think that that has changed. It at least changed who the actress was going to be, because Kate Dickie, who played Dox, was originally supposed to be an older version of Sylvie that was going to be at the end of time. It was going to be this big reveal, but we just saw Dox get turned into a bunch of mushy blood and bone because of the square, the friggin' cube thing. So unless they went really crazy, it seems like they pivoted and changed this older leak where Sylvie would be at the end of time. And I now think they've made it so Loki will be at the end of time, which again is what this image is showing you here. In this image here, we see Loki in this new costume. It actually has kind of an Egyptian feel, which is interesting. We see a throne behind him, and the steps that he is walking down look very similar to the cracked kintsugi-like structure that is at the end of time in the Citadel at the end of time. So this image is kind of showing you what I think will end up being a Loki that is at the end of time in charge of of everything that's now happening. Oh, and by the way, I think there's a big visual clue in episode 4 that's going to explain this, because Ravonna and Miss Minutes get sent to the end of time. But one of the things that's crazy is on the floor at the end of time is this structure carved into the stone. Now, this right here is what's known as a Decker square. It is an optical illusion. And what makes this even more interesting is after scanning this room and Miss Minutes putting on that sort of holographic video of what had happened way in the past, you know, when He Who Remains first betrayed her and erased her memory. Well, if you look at the floor in that model, it is not the Necker square. It is instead a circle with a triangle within it. And so I think this is a little visual clue that when Ravonna and Miss Minutes pop up in the Citadel at the end of time, they are witnessing an illusion. And who do we know is maybe one of the greatest illusionists in all of Marvel? Loki. As we did see the older version of Loki do an incredibly realistic illusion of all of Asgard in Loki Season 1. There's even a moment there where Loki tells Sylvie, I think we're stronger than we ever realized. Now, some of this I've already been theorizing about. I've made a couple of different videos explaining the theory that Loki is Avenger Prime. And this kind of has to do with some leaks about Deadpool 3, the TVA, and Secret Wars in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I recommend watching 2 videos that I recently did if you want to get the full picture of what I'm talking about here. But the TLDR is that over the course of the last couple of years in Marvel Comics, Jason Aaron in his Avengers books has been developing a character known as Avenger Prime, who was essentially a mysterious Avenger at the end of time that had an Avengers tower that was going across the multiverse recruiting a multiversal group of Avengers. And because that's very similar to what we think the TVA is going to be doing in Deadpool 3 and in the Secret Wars movie, well, it just kind of naturally occurred to me that, yeah, they're probably setting that up with the Loki character via his show. I should probably also stop for a second and explain to the more casual among you that Kevin Feige is now the CCO of all of Marvel. That means he's the chief creative officer, meaning even Marvel Comics now runs ideas past Kevin Feige and gets notes and makes adjustments according to his feedback. And some scoopers and insiders have suggested that this is so that Kevin Feige can put stuff into Marvel Comics that will come up in the MCU like a couple of years later. Basically, Feige wants there to be more of a connection between Marvel Comics and the MCU, which is overall a great thing because that'll make people that are already watching the Marvel shows and the Marvel movies maybe go check out Marvel Comics to sort of get a leg up on what other fans might know about these different twists and turns that are going to be happening in their favorite movies and TV shows. It's a good thing, and I'm really excited that it's happening. So I think that's partially what they're doing with the Loki character. He is going to be Avenger Prime in the sense that I think he's going to be going out there and recruiting a multiversal group of Avengers that we will see in Avengers Secret Wars. But there's a new twist, a new kind of thread in this theory that I have, and it's got me super excited. Now, this comes from My Time to Shine Hello, sort of teasing that Loki may become the God of Stories. Now, the God of Stories Loki is a version of Loki that is absurdly powerful, and it comes out of a book called Loki, Agent of Asgard. And Loki, the God of Stories, is actually very similar to Avenger Prime Loki, where he starts out by realizing that Lokis always lose and that they're destined to make other people great and they're destined to be a villain. And God of Stories Loki rejects this and begins trying to figure out a way to not be a villain, to break his cosmic destiny. And this basically leads God of Stories Loki to going around at different places in the multiverse and discovering more and more powers, and essentially gets to the point where he realizes that he is the God of stories, and because everything in Marvel and everything in the Omniverse is essentially a story, he has the ability to do some crazy high concept powerful things. Like, for instance, maybe you know about the Beyonders, maybe you know about the Void, the Great Shore, the White Room, the One Above All, Eternity, some of these really high concept Marvel things. Well, God of Stories Loki is more powerful than all of those things. In the Agent of Asgard story, Doctor Doom is also realizing this about the power of story, and he wants to get this power of creating narratives for himself. And he tells the God of Stories Loki, when he's sort of younger in the story, that he's been to the end of time, and Doctor Doom has seen that at the end of time, it is a Loki. It is King Loki that is manipulating all of this. Well, essentially what happens is that God of Stories Loki meets King Loki at the end of time, and he shows just how powerful he is, to the point where King Loki runs away past everything in the entire omniverse, and God of Stories Loki still tracks him down, one-shots him, and just keeps on doing what he's doing. There are also these new kind of overlord gods that were introduced in the King Thanos storyline and in some new Thor books, and they're called the ones above who sit in shadow. And up until the moment where they confront God of Stories Loki, they are considered to be the most powerful thing in all of Marvel, like above every single thing. And God of Stories Loki basically tells them he can rewrite even their story, because it all exists within this high concept thing known as the House of Ideas, which on the one hand is obviously a reference to the nickname that was bestowed on Marvel early on, but is also this really crazy high concept thing within the hierarchy of power in Marvel Comics. And because everything that ever will exist is basically being told in the form of a story, God of Stories Loki can manipulate it all. And I don't want to get too lost in the like crazy comic book bombastic power scaling nonsense that goes on in this comic book. I mean, I do love that stuff personally, but it can get really weird for casuals. But there's one thing that the God of Stories Loki does that I think will really relate to this Loki we're going to meet at the end of Loki Season 2, and perhaps moving forward throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe. God of Stories Loki starts petrifying moments in time, saving them as the entire multiverse is being destroyed, so that after it reboots, he can take those frozen, petrified moments in time and put them back into the timeline so it kind of resembles what it was before. And I think given the fact that we just saw the entire multiverse explode, and we're going to need to rectify that in some way, and we know the MCU is headed towards Secret Wars and headed towards a reboot, I wouldn't be surprised if God of Stories Loki, or Avenger Prime Loki, or this version of Loki that we're going to see at the end of Season 2 is one that is able to petrify these moments, stop or slow down or freeze the multiverse as it's being destroyed, and he's basically going to be the new architect for all of the stories going forward within the MCU. So although we don't know exactly how this is going to take place in the final 2 episodes of Loki Season 2, this image here is actually from Loki Season 2. And again, this is a costume that you're going to see Loki wear, and this is essentially going to be a Loki that replaces He Who Remains and becomes the real arbiter of story within the MCU. And I also think the person behind recruiting the multiversal Avengers to eventually destroy Beyonder Kang in Secret Wars. I think this stuff is absolutely dope. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. We'll talk more about it on streams as well, so come on by the live streaming channel. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.